As I was trying to envision the setup of the flying window and how all the drops are going to work together in relationship to the scaffolding, etc., I drew out a 3D plan in SketchUp. And then I just kept on going and kept on going until I sketched the whole theater and the show setup, which I think is quite valuable for taking a look at the problems that I think you guys have already started to realize they're going to be with sightlines in the studio. So here is the theater, and if you see here, this is the seating, and the seating I've just put in the extreme seats. So here is the back of the house, here is the front row of seats, and there are also people who sit on the floor in this theater, of course, and those are very extreme seats. Maybe we don't want to worry about them too much. But just to get started, let's just take a look at the scaffolding. So here is our beautiful scaffolding. We are on 3 sections, and I've devised a way to put railings on, and a railing that will also be an attachment point for the center black. And you can take a look. These railings are made out of perforated steel tube, square tube, which we can order from McMaster Carr. It comes pre-perforated with 1-inch centered holes. So we can very easily just bolt the scaffolds to each other through the vertical piece, thereby locking it in together. And by locking all 3 of these together, I think we'll make it quite stable. Then there's a little standoff here, and this actually gives us a little bit of distance between the black that'll be tied on here and the scaffolding, which gives us room for the vertical, the window to fly up and down. On the upstage side, there's aircraft cable that's going to be stretched from the 2 ends and then to run through holes in the vertical pieces. This will not be a great protection, but it will, if you get near it, you'll absolutely know that you're near the edge and give you a sense of security to know where you are and how to keep yourself safe up there. And so then we tie the black onto the scaffolding, and that's our center black. And then we'll tie the rest of the blacks onto the flying pipe, usually dedicated to the scrim. And then we'll align all this stuff so that they're all on the same plane. And that is so that when we get the flying window, it can fly just behind this cross piece and just downstage of the scaffolding. There's a little hole there where it should fly up and down nice and neatly. That was Mimi's concern, and I think this sorts that out. And you can see here what that means when it's down and what it means when it's up. So now let's take a look at the people and standing underneath. There are several problems here. First of all, I'll just say that these cross braces are obviously a problem. I have an idea for that. The scaffolding is set as at the highest permissible setting. It's as high as it goes on the ladder side braces, and when it is there, is 5'9" to the bottom side of the scaffolding platform. So this guy, he's drawn at 5'10", and she's drawn at 5'6". So you can see it cuts into his head. I don't know how tall our dancers are, but this is a little bit tight and obviously not visually the best thing. It could be possible to jump that platform up 5 inches if we attached it to a different hole that's not part of the normal setup, but it is possible, and I think it would be safe if we did it, if we set it up in a certain way. However, that does do something else to people when they're in the upside, the up position, up top. You can see that the horizontal line here is actually quite low, just above the knees, and that's when the platform is at 6'1" to the feet, 5'9" to the bottom of the platform, 6'1" to the top. So if we were to jump that whole platform up 5 inches to give the performers more headroom when underneath, that would jump these 2 people up another 5 inches, which would mean the horizontal line is lower even than this. It would be at the knees or even maybe a little less. So there's that. given all things, I think that this is the best case. I don't know how tall the male dancer is. Hopefully he's less than 5'9", and hopefully that looks better than you see in this drawing. So now for just general sight lines, from the back of the house left, you can see it's actually pretty good. You can just see the upstage vertical pipes where the aircraft cable is attached. We can fix that by dropping those pipes down maybe a couple of inches just to clear sight lines, and that should be no problem. And then here's from the rear of the house right, similarly, but that will be fixed. And then when the window is in its down position, this is house left, front row. You can see sight lines are pretty good. House right, front row. And even for the people who sit on the ground, the sight lines are not that bad at all. Maybe you have to be a little careful about positioning there. But when the window is in the upper position is when we have problems. And so here we can see from the rear of the house, the house left seat, you can see just a little bit of the scaffold, and of course you can see these cross braces. So that's not great. And from the other side, you can still see the cross braces, of course. But when you get to the front row, you see quite a bit of the ladder, and of course you would see people going up and down. So that's not great, and I think that's what you guys started to realize in the studio. And then from house right, you can also start to see a little bit of that scaffolding. The people on the floor in the front, of course, have even a worse time of it, and they can even see the bottom of the platform. So my idea for seeing the ladders and perhaps for masking the people getting up and down is to create a white cover. I would think it would be best if it was actually a hard flat covered in white muslin, bleached muslin, that could just sit right against the end, right flat against the ladder. So behind it, people can go up and down, but here it is masked. For the bottom here, we would paint it, or probably just cover it with white gaff, because that's a nice, clean, easy way to cover things like that. And I think those are the solutions. Those aren't great because people who would now be seeing this, and they still wouldn't be an ideal thing for them, because rather than seeing just a clear, open white cyclorama, they would have, a blocked white thing. But it is a solution that solves some stuff. Yeah, so now I'm going to go over to the real scaffold and show you the idea for getting rid of these. But it is a little bit of work, but I think we can do it. So here we are in my living room where I've set up the scaffold and where I've been able to get all those precise measurements to be able to do the SketchUp so we could see the problems with sightlines, etc. So the one big problem is, if you take a look, you can see this line right here. This is the 4'6" opening, 2'3" left and right of center of the scaffold. So basically the blacks would go right down here, and we would have this much visible, and even a little bit more depending on where you're looking in. And of course, if you're the upstage side, lots of people would see lots of all that. So I do have a potential solution for that. It is cut these things off. Cut them off. Now that would maybe be okay, but as you can see, then you're really relying on just these welds to hold it all together. So I propose we get a plate of steel that is welded onto all this, maybe a triangle, something like that, welded onto there and there, so it can make it really rigid. And we would do it to all of these, up stage and down stage, so that these cross braces would be gone. And if we did that, I would get rid of these two, even though they're mostly not seen. And if we did that, it would be absolutely secure and fine structurally. So that's that solution. So I've got to find out somebody who could do that. right quick, because we're talking about all this stuff having to happen really quickly. And just so you can see also here, if you can see, this is the pin that holds it in its position. So you can move this thing up and down to get the height you want by slipping this pin into the various holes. This is the slider, and you can put it in any of these heights. If you notice, up here on the little nub, there's a hole as well. So we could jump this thing from here all the way up there and get 5, maybe almost 6 inches extra height. Now, that's not official, but I do believe, and I've actually done it, and I've taken a look at it, it's very stable, especially when we've put this kind of a different kind of a plate to weld it all together, and the fact that we're going to go above and beyond this, and we're going to through bolt this thing in a couple of places so that all this stuff is really secure. I think that that's possible if we wanted to get that extra height. I do think the extra height will be a problem for the performers being really high, but maybe that is the way we want to go as well. So that is the video that shows you the solution for the things. And like I said, if we were to build a white flat that would just sit on this side as close as possible, people could be climbing up and down the flat from behind. It would all appear white, a beautiful white box, and that is kind of as good as I think it's going to get. And there you have it. Okay, great.